Hello and welcome to my new video. Today I will present a recent paper about mangroves and nitrogen fixation. Since mangroves are such fascinating organisms, I will seize the opportunity and talk a bit more about them. Why are mangroves fascinating? You see the reason already in the background. They are plants living in the wrong place. Trees and the ocean usually don't fit together, even when it's only the rim of the ocean. Conditions there are very hostile even to small plants, let alone large trees. How do they cope nevertheless? Let's have a look. In this page, I have summarized why plants usually don't grow in coastal waters, even when there's plenty of sunny space. The substrate, either sand or mud, is unstable and shifting around, driven by waves and the tidal flow. The mechanical stress connected to these movements alone is sufficient to kill most plants. But there's more. Within the substrate, nutrient and oxygen levels are very low, which is bad for plant growth. And finally, there is salinity. Salinity is toxic to land plants in general. Some plants have evolved tolerating moderate levels of salinity. The full level of ocean salinity, however, can only be tolerated by seagrass or mangroves. Two final comments before we start asking how mangroves can cope with this bundle of bad conditions. First, their success is not only interesting from a scientific point of view, it is also important for whole ecosystems and for humans. From this image, you can immediately see why. Mangrove forests are protecting shorelines against the power of the oceans. Furthermore, they also form extremely productive ecosystems, providing shelter to many animals. Second point, mangroves are not a uniform group of plants. The adaptations to cope with such conditions, miraculous as they may appear, accordingly have evolved several times independently. Now let's ask our main question. How can a tree evolve to grow under such harsh conditions? Let's start with salinity. There are several mechanisms allowing mangrove trees tolerating the high level of ocean salinity. The cells are able to work under higher levels of sodium chloride than cells from most other plants. At the same time, mangroves have evolved mechanisms to dispose of a large part of the salt taken up by the environment. Many plants are excreting salt by either forming little salt droplets or crystals on their leaves. Then there is mechanical stress caused by waves, tidal flow, and the unstable substrate. How can mangrove trees cope with this? One adaptation addresses the seeds of many mangrove trees. They are relatively large and already start germinating when still attached to the plant. Once fallen from the tree, they are able to float over large distances. When they hit ground, their roots already formed will immediately grow and anchor the small planted in the substrate. Roots in general are the answer of mangrove trees to waves, tidal flow, etc. Mangrove trees grow as many roots as possible and try to get a grip on anything they can reach. Once there are enough roots, matter will start accumulating below the trees and things are starting to stabilize. This sounds easy, and when you look at the impressive amount of roots mangrove do produce, it really seems to be the way forward. But how do they do given the unsuitable substrate present on the beach? Water-saturated sand or mud contains very little oxygen and nutrients. You need both to grow a reasonable amount of roots. The lack of oxygen can be solved relatively easy. Mangrove roots not only transport liquids as normal roots, they also transport air. All roots of mangroves are able to do this, but there's one sort of roots particularly suited to this task. They are growing like long cables just below the surface of the substrate. Short rootlets extend upwards from these cables, reaching airspace eventually. These rootlets will transport air. Let's have a look how they do it. There are little openings on the aerial surface of these rootlets, openings allowing the passage of air while blocking water. These openings are connected to an extensive system of large air channels crisscrossing the roots of mangrove trees. These openings and air channels are not restricted to the little rootlets growing upwards, they are present in all parts of the mangrove root system, ensuring efficient aeration of the complete system. So, deficiency of oxygen is no problem for mangroves. And what about nutrients? Nutrients are very scarce in environments dominated by the ocean. Nitrogen is the nutrient needed in highest amounts for plant growth, and the publication I am reporting about here was focused on this nutrient. The researchers demonstrated that there are bacteria, most notably in lateral roots from the cable roots just introduced, able to transform atmospheric nitrogen into a form of nitrogen usable by plants. This process is called nitrogen fixation. Its contribution to plant nutrition is best known for legumes, where bacteria responsible for nitrogen fixation are concentrated in nodules, little bodies attached to the roots. There are, however, many bacteria around fixing nitrogen without nodules, and these bacteria apparently also grow in the roots of mangroves. The scientists also demonstrated that atmospheric nitrogen is indeed taken up by mangrove root systems and incorporated into mangrove plant tissue, which means that the process is actually working and supporting the plants. Let me shortly summarize. Mangrove trees, the keystones of crucially important ecosystems, have to cope with a number of adverse conditions in their habitat. Above all, they have to grow fast enough to dominate over waves, tidal flow, and moving substrates. This high growth level has to be reached in spite of salinity, low oxygen, and low nutrient levels, factors which are all impairing growth. Mangroves apparently have found ways to cope with all these factors. In the paper presented here, researchers demonstrated the existence of a new mechanism for coping with one of these factors with low nutrients. There were indications pointing to such a mechanism before, but this publication is the first to demonstrate actually metabolic relevance of this mechanism. What remains to be demonstrated is the importance of this mechanism in the overall picture. Is it really an important source of nitrogen for mangrove trees, or only a source for some additional income? Further research is necessary to address this question.